Good morning to you. How you doing? It's Sunday morning, November 25th, 2018. Lovely morning here in Manchester. A little bit milder than it's been over the course of the last few days. Bit milder. Nice to be alive, nice to be up, and nice to have your company. This is Sunday View. Going to take a look at the front pages of the Sunday newspapers and some of the stories inside as well. And as usual, you can join in. You know how to do that by now. You can join in through Twitter, so tweet me. Welcome to the programme.
Asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
And if you're listening for the very first time, it's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter, Sunday View, live on Fab Radio 2, TuneIn Radio, triggerwarning.tv, and of course richieallen.co.uk, which is my website. Welcome to the show.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yeah, just remembered to turn on Twitter. Everything was off there for a minute. Beavering away I was, editing some audio. Been listening to the mid-morning, early morning talk shows on BBC and Sky. Very interesting stuff to bring you over the course of the next hour. This is Sunday View. You better crack on. I think there's an awful lot to cover. A little bit of Brexit early on, early doors. Ron Atkinson, God bless him. Early doors. But don't despair. I've got some very interesting human interest stories to bring you a bit later in the programme. Fascinating stuff in terms of human interest, cultural stuff in the Mail on Sunday particularly, but also in some of the broadsheets as well. How are you? You well? Have you had a good weekend? Are you in good form this morning? I'm working, Richie. I'm listening to you at work. All right, fair enough. Some of us have to work on Sundays. Yours truly included. Right then, shall we move on? Shall we get into the programme? Let's do it then. Before we look at the front pages of the papers, it should be mentioned, it's no surprise, by the way, but it should be mentioned that the remaining 27 members of the European Union, well, the leaders of those countries have endorsed the UK-EU withdrawal deal. They've endorsed it, all right? Donald Tusk has announced this morning. The 27 leaders gave it their backing. It took less than an hour. It was never in doubt. There was no doubt they would give their backing to this. Let's hear from Laura Kuenssberg at the BBC.
Well, Andrew, after 18 months of coming to these Brussels summits saying, can a deal be done? No, it can't. Yes, it can. Maybe. Who knows? It is done. In the last 15 minutes, the 27 European leaders have signed off that withdrawal agreement, the divorce deal, and the political declaration, that sketched out relationship for how things will be between the UK and the rest of the continent for decades to come. And Theresa May has just arrived. Now they've signed it off with a big rubber stamp to get this whole process going. What's been really interesting, I've been talking to EU leaders as they were arriving before their meeting this morning, every single one of them sticking to the same script. This is as good as it gets. Now over to Britain's MPs.
I guess one of the obvious questions is for all those people at home who've been saying from the left and the right, we could accept this if you make one more tweak. It's now too late for any tweaks. Is that right?
It's in black and white. I mean, the deal has been done. But remember, there is in the political declaration that sketched out skeleton, if you like, for how things are going to be in the years to come. There's a lot still that is open there. It could be, over years to come, designed to make us being in a very, very close relationship with the EU, something like, best friends and neighbours and almost still living in each other's pockets. Or it could end up with a deal for decades to come that's something much looser, respectful neighbours doing business together, but pretty distinct and pretty separate.
Yeah, it's in black and white. There'll be no tweaking it now, said Kuenssberg there to Andrew Marr on the Andrew Marr Show earlier. This was a given, the support of the remaining 27 members, but of course it has to pass the UK Parliament now. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I'll keep it interesting, I swear. I say this, I go through this spiel every time because I do get hate emails about Brexit. but we've got to talk about it, right? I try to make it as interesting as I can. Maybe I fail, maybe I don't. The papers, right, we'll run through these Brexit stories. The Mail on Sunday. Headline on the Mail on Sunday is PM plea to the people, back my Brexit. PM plea to the people, back my Brexit. So the Mail on Sunday leads with this letter, a 800-word letter to the nation, written by Theresa May, which is extraordinary. Apparently there's been no precedent. No Prime Minister in history has ever done this. May promises her deal will lead to a brighter future when we put aside the labels of leave and remain for good. The Mail also reporting that her closest aides are considering a live public debate between May and Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. That'll be interesting because May ran away from the spectre of leaders' live television debates before the last general election. I don't know. So she's written this letter then, unprecedented. Camilla Tominey is the associate editor of the Telegraph newspaper. Here she is on the letter.
The Mail on Sunday here has laid it all out and highlighted the relevant passages. It's interesting that she actually draws on quite an emotional argument, talking about how she's never lost sight of her sense of duty, that she will be campaigning with her heart and soul to win the vote. She even weaponises the quite controversial Brexiteer quote about the number on the bus, about an extra 394 million, so a bit more than the 350 million that we'll have left to plough into the NHS.
For a Remain campaigner back in the day, she sounds very, very Brexity.
She does sound Brexity, but as Glenn Owen and Harry Cole point out in the Mail on Sunday, I like the way they've put this, she will need a Houdini-like political skills to survive. And of course, it's not just that she has to convince the country, but also her cabinet and also the Commons. And the consensus is the vote is not going to pass.
And the current figure, I think, is 91 Tory MPs are saying they're going to vote against it. So she just hasn't got the arithmetic.
Right, that was Andrew Pearce there from the Daily Mail at the end. She doesn't have the arithmetic. And Camilla Tominey, Telegraph associate editor on that letter. All the papers deal with this morning, unsurprisingly, because the announcement was due to come, and it has come, that the European Union, remaining 27, have endorsed this agreement, this withdrawal agreement. So all the papers are full of it, at least the front pages anyway. The Sunday Express headline is, Dear Britain, get behind my deal and we can get on with Brexit. Same thing really. The Express is urging its readers to look at the letter in full and decide for themselves. The Express says the Prime Minister has listed 40 reasons to back the deal and talked a lot about her passion. May hopes that voter pressure will persuade waverers in Parliament. So Theresa May went on BBC Radio 5 Live with a woman called Emma Barnett. Do you remember Emma Barnett? She's the latest BBC superstar presenter to come from nowhere. Pretty talentless and gormless is Barnett, but she's come from nowhere in the last year. She was the woman who interviewed Kevin Myers, a terrific Irish journalist and writer, when Myers made a pretty wry and pretty sharp observation about Claudia Winkleman and Vanessa Feltz when there was all this talk about women and pay at the BBC. Barnett is an interesting one, not least because of her background. She's the BBC's latest, anyway, I'm not going to get into it. I've talked about her before. But May went on her programme on Friday and answered questions from the nation. Now May is writing letters. So it would appear that there is some movement by May's team to get people to put pressure on their own local MPs to support this deal. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Anyway, the Sunday Observer. May begs the public, unite behind me on the Brexit deal. So like I told you, this is the focus of the UK print media this morning, this letter, and May, because it was always going to be the case that the EU was going to endorse this withdrawal thing, which is a legally binding document, by the way. Talk more about that maybe in a minute. It was always the case. So now she's got to try and get it through Parliament, right? The Sunday Telegraph takes a slightly different perspective on this. The headline on the Sunday Telegraph today is Secret Plan B for Brexit. What does that mean? Secret Plan B for Brexit? Well, the Sunday Telegraph alleges that cabinet ministers and European Union diplomats are drawing up plans, secret plans, Plan B, for Brexit based on this assumption that Theresa May's deal will be blocked by Parliament, right? So based on the idea that no matter what is said today, this isn't getting by Parliament, apparently cabinet ministers and EU unelected diplomats, unelected bureaucrats are drawing up Plan B. Senior figures on both sides of the channel are urgently plotting alternatives to the agreement struck by the Prime Minister and the EU after 91 Conservative MPs indicated they would vote it down in the Commons. In an open letter to the country, May insists her deal honours the result of the referendum, blah, blah, blah. But sources told the Sunday Telegraph that senior ministers were talking up one Plan B idea, wait for it dear listener, of a Norway-style relationship with Brussels, under which the UK would have a more certain exit mechanism. But would be unable to end the free movement of workers from the continent. So this Plan B would be a Norway-style relationship where allegedly the UK would be able to extricate herself from certain EU rules, but the UK would have to abide by current freedom of movement agreements. So free movement would continue if Plan B is put into effect. Under the Norway option, the UK would remain a member of the European Economic Area without full EU membership. This is a leaked document, and it states the proposed Treasury modelling is designed to support any meaningful vote in Parliament on the final deal, right? Diplomats believe that a reprieve. What they're talking about as well is extending Article 50. This has been talked about a lot today because, again, it is widely believed that because 91 Tories are saying they won't vote for May's deal, pretty much all of the Labour Party won't vote for it. The DUPs, the Scottish members of Parliament, of course, as well, the Scottish National Party, it's dead in the water. So now they're talking about extending Article 50. So put us in purgatory, basically, in the never, diplomats. So again, to reiterate, this Plan B, this Norway-style EEA membership, European Economic Area, is accepting that freedom of movement will continue, that the borders of Europe, well, the borders of the UK would remain open for EU citizens forevermore. So May can't get it through Parliament then. Let's hear from a Tory MP, a Labour MP, and DUP leader Arlene Foster. Let's get three different party perspectives on what's happened this morning. Ian Duncan Smith first. Former Tory leader, will Ian Duncan Smith support the Prime Minister? Will he vote with the Prime Minister?
Well, I haven't seen the final bit of the deal and whether anything's changed or not, but what I saw over the last week and a half to 2 weeks makes it very, very difficult for somebody like me to support this deal. It seems to me that far too much has been given to the European Union and far too little seems to ally itself with our commitments both at the Lancaster House speech, which she made, and more importantly in some senses, the manifesto pledge we made at the last election. And those were very clear that we'd take back full control of our laws, our borders and our money. And there are real issues in this. The number one issue, of course, is the backstop in Northern Ireland, which cedes huge amounts of power to the European Union, both to the Court of Justice, but also for the very fact that the Northern Ireland will be treated differently from the rest of the UK, and we will be stuck, if we go into the backstop, in the customs union, obeying all those rules and regulations. So there are many other issues as well, but those are immediately what were in the paper and don't appear to have changed.
Don't forget now that back in January of this year, in Theresa May's famous Lancaster House speech, she said that the UK will bring an end to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice because we won't have left the EU if we are not in control of our laws. She said that in January, but she's given that away. She talked about strengthening the union. We must strengthen the precious union between the four nations of the UK. We will work very carefully to ensure that as powers are repatriated back to Britain, the right powers are returned to Westminster and passed to the devolved administrations. She's reneged on that. And of course, importantly, control of immigration. Back in January, May said, and I quote, "The message from the public before and during the referendum campaign was clear. Brexit must mean control of the number of people who come to Britain from Europe. We will continue to attract the brightest and the best to work or study in Britain, but there must be control." So that's all been given away. That's what Duncan Smith meant when he talked about the Lancaster House speech, even if you'd forgotten. Duncan Smith then warns that hidden in the withdrawal agreement, but unbeknownst to most people, is language that suggests that freedom of movement will not end anyway, no matter what. Here's Duncan Smith again.
There's another one too, Sophie, which is quite important. I was looking again at the report, and I noticed that in the area where the government talks about ending freedom of movement, I have to say, having written a paper on this, I don't really think that's correct, because it now talks in there, buried in there, that there would be social security coordination between us and the EU. I think when you strip out the language, what that actually means is that we are prepared to cede to citizens of the European Union an almost immediate right to claim benefits. And this has caused huge damage to many, many on low incomes who are competing with them when they find that they come in on very low salaries and claim all the benefits. I mean, it cost for those on low income, for the UK taxpayer, it cost us about £500 million in the last year of record. So these are very, very big issues and questions whether we really are going to seriously think about ending freedom of movement.
Don't think for a second that Ian Duncan Smith gives a shit about people on low incomes. He doesn't. Neither does Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg. I've got to reiterate this. People get confused when they hear this programme. They get very confused because they only hear what they want to hear. I've got a precious audience, a very reactionary audience that loses their fucking minds when they hear something. They don't listen to the rest of the paragraph or the sentence. I am an Irish Republican. I believe in a united Ireland. I also understand what the European Union is and where it is meant to lead. It is about taking control away, not from people in the UK, but from everybody, dissolving national sovereignty and putting control of everything into the hands of a tiny few people. That's what it is. I'm using the Duncan Smith audio because even though Duncan Smith is a psychopath, proven during his time as Work and Pension Secretary, on this point he is correct. On the freedom of movement point he is correct. Right? Gotta keep saying that. People keep asking me, I can't believe you throwing your lot in with Rees. I throw my lot in with nobody. I understand who Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, Ian Duncan Smith and Liam Fox and all these people really are. And I know that even though on the face of it I'm agreeing with them about the European Union, I know what they want to do with the country. They don't want to take back sovereignty of this country from the fascist superstate that is the EU and then give it back to the people. Of course they don't. I'm not a fucking moron. I know this. Right. You should see my inbox, dear listener. Honestly, the stuff I get from people who should know better. Screaming letters. I can't believe it. Listen. Don't support or like any of these people. Many times I have to say that. Please. Come on. Come on, you've been with me long enough now. We've been friends now for 4 years. Some of us have been friends 6, 7 years from my time in London. Some of us have been friends for 10, 11 years. Stop jumping out of your bed screaming when you hear 16 words of a sentence. Wait till the end of it. Right? These people are, they are as much tyrannical, these people, as, you're talking about people who burn £50 notes in the faces of homeless people for a laugh. You're talking about people who, when they go to their private schools, think it's funny to insert baby pigeons into the anuses of their friends until the pigeon expires and their friend is bitten while they roll around laughing their backsides off. These are the worst of the worst, these people. How could you imagine that I would support these people? I haven't voted in an election since 2002. That's 16 years ago. Right. Have we got that down finally now? We have. Do we understand one another? Right, Duncan Smith is right. Hidden in the language of the withdrawal agreement is a provision for people to come here from Europe and claim benefits. Yeah. Right, okay. Now, why didn't the media report on that? Because they're not supposed to. Because the media is unequivocally, it is unilaterally the media in favour of the UK staying in the European Union. So the leader of the DUP, Arlene Foster, she was on with Andrew Marr today as well. Her party is in a very precarious confidence and supply arrangement with the Tories. What the hell, Richie, does that mean? Some of you will no doubt be crying. It means that after the election last year, Theresa May had no majority. The Conservative Party said no. Conservative Party, while the largest party after the election, didn't have a majority. So in return for favours, the DUP said, well, we'll vote with you in Parliament when necessary in return for favours. Do you remember all of that outcry when millions was found out of nowhere to give to the DUP, to give to the Northern Irish Assembly, to the government there? And people were saying, where did they find that money? Apparently they didn't have any money, but they found that money. Well, they did, and so on, so on. Will Arlene Foster support the deal? You won't be surprised by the answer.
No, there aren't, because the withdrawal agreement, which has been ratified this morning, has a very large section in it, the Irish Protocol as it is known, which is legal text, an internationally binding treaty which makes a difference between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK.
For people watching at home, they might be slightly confused because Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are already in a single electricity deal. And perhaps more to the point, when livestock is moved from Britain into Northern Ireland, it's checked. I mean, there are veterinary checks, there are physical checks, there are paper checks. And all this is saying is that there are going to be further regulatory checks. Isn't there already a border down the Irish Sea?
No, there isn't. Those are very sensible checks that have been agreed between all of the parties. What we're seeing in this Irish Protocol is much more than that. We're seeing us staying within the European Union in terms of the single market. The customs union rules will apply to Northern Ireland. We're in the same VAT regime as Europe. We're in the same state aid as Europe. And there is very much a border down the Irish Sea as a result of this, and that's why we can't support this deal.
There you are. Arlene Foster, Ian Duncan Smith and 90 other Tories won't support it. The DUP won't support it. Let's hear from Lisa Nandy. Lisa Nandy is in Wigan and she's a Labour MP. She's one of them that pretends to be a people person. She pretends to be a socialist, talks about workers' rights and all of that. Her brains are in her arse, basically. Hasn't a clue. Listen to Lisa Nandy. Will she support the deal?
Well, I'd hoped that it would be, but in all honesty, no, it's not. And it's inconceivable now that when this comes before Parliament...
I can't support the deal now, really.
Parliament in just a few days' time that I'll be voting for it. I won't be voting...
I won't be voting for it.
...voting to support the withdrawal agreement. The problem isn't the withdrawal agreement itself.
Ooh. What is the problem, Lisa?
It's this 26-page political declaration that comes alongside it, which still even just...
That's the 26-page political declaration.
With a few days to go until this crunch vote, offers no guide as to what the future holds for the UK. The problem that's facing someone like me sitting here in Wigan is that I don't know at all from that 26-page declaration whether the future of the UK looks like one that is very closely allied to the EU with all of the standards at work and protections that come with it, or whether we're going down a low-tax, low-wage economy that will remove all of those rights at work that my constituents rely on. Just down the road, I've got people who work in factories.
She's got people who work in factories.
On the railways and
on railways.
And in the construction industry.
And in construction industry.
And this is not an academic question for them. These are health and safety laws, for example, that have kept people alive at work in Wigan for decades because of those EU regulations that we ourselves have negotiated.
You daft bint! You daft bint! You cloth-eared daft bint! I'll stop her there. Crazy shit this is. We have to stay in EU so our workers don't fall off ladders and break their heads. safety standards, blah, blah, blah. Do you need to be a member of a fascist federalist superstate in order to write legislation to protect people and their health in work? And if we negotiated that deal, I mean, you couldn't be any dumber than Lisa Nandy. I mean, proper dumb. I mean, dumb beyond any... I can't find words to describe how dumb. We negotiated all of that health and safety legislation, did you? So why do you need to be a member of the club then to enact that legislation in your country, you silly mayor? Safety standards, Wigan. I've got people in train station. I've got people over there. I've got people in construction industry. So I have... Yeah. She never knocked on a door in a housing estate in her life. I'm going to stop now. Lisa Nandy and all of that jazz. We've got to be in the European Union to protect our rights because we're incapable of standing up for ourselves. But of course it's idiots like Lisa Nandy and all those pretend socialists on the Labour backbenches who have stood idly by while unions have had their power taken away from them over the last 25 to 30 years. Ironically, because when you have good unions run by good people in the interest of the workforce, you don't have so much of a problem with having to depend on the European Union to look after your rights. Nobody or no institution has done more damage to the rights of workers on the continent than the European Union itself. What a fuck. Don't get me started here now. Oh, it gets worse. Lord Adonis, proper tit, Lord Adonis, chair of the National Infrastructure Commission, Labour peer and Blairite to the marrow. Lord Adonis says today is Black Sunday. He says today is Black Sunday. He tells Adam Bolton, it's Black Sunday today, before losing his mind and becoming hysterical to the point where he starts channeling Neville Chamberlain. This is Lord Adonis.
Well, I think this is Black Sunday for Britain and for Europe. It's on a par with Chamberlain coming back from Munich with a piece of paper that will do just huge damage to Britain and to Europe. It wrenches us out of Europe. It will damage our trade. It will damage our international security. And the only good news about it, as you were just reporting, is that it's very unlikely to go through Parliament. There's no majority for this in the House of Commons. And when the Prime Minister wrote this morning and said that she will campaign for this with her heart and soul, well, I welcome the fact that she wants to campaign, because what she should be doing, of course, is campaigning in the country for it, because this is such a big issue for the British people, affecting their jobs, their security, their future, the next generation, Ireland, that the right thing is now for it to go to a people's vote, to a referendum, and let the Prime Minister campaign for her deal, and then we can all campaign for staying in the EU so that we don't have to pay this £39 billion for an act of national humiliation and self-harm.
Yeah, Lord Adonis there. So Adam Bolton said to him then, well, you'll do anything to stop the democratic result of the people from June 2016, won't you? You'll do anything, he said to him.
Until last week, we didn't know what the deal would be on leaving the EU. It's taken Theresa May 2.5 years in negotiations with our European partners to get a deal. We didn't know that we were going to be leaving the customs union and the single market.
What kind of fuckery is this?
We didn't know that we were going to be leaving the customs union and the single market.
The British public would be voting, if we leave, would be to leave the EU and leave the single market.
Should we come out the single market? I think that is almost certainly would be the case, yes.
Do you want us to stay inside the single market, yes or no?
No, we should be outside the single market.
I had Michael Gove in that chair and I said, after Brexit, will we be in the European single market, yes or no? And he said, no.
And he was right.
So we won't be in the European
single market.
Michael,
yeah, absolutely.
We'd be out of the single market. That's the reality. Britain would be quitting the single market.
Yeah, I asked Joe Pesci earlier. Lord Adonis said that we didn't know what we were voting for.
You know you're a lying, low-life, motherfucking gambling degenerate prick. You know that's what you are?
That's exactly what he is, Joe. That's exactly what he is. They knew. They knew. Ah, Christ, eh? Do you know I've not had a drink for a week? Do you know that? That's the truth. None this weekend, nothing. I'm proud of myself. I've never been more proud. I'm on the dry till Christmas. This is the Richie Allen Show, Sunday View, live on Sunday, 25th of November 2018. And my name is Richie Allen, by the way. This is U2. In the days before Bono was groomed by the Clintons. This is good stuff. Music from one of the greatest albums of all time, Achtung Baby, U2, Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois. 91. Even better than the real thing. Just about the time that Bono was meeting with the Clinton campaign regularly. I did a monologue on that about 18 months ago, how Bill Clinton groomed Bono. Very interesting. It's probably pure horse shit. It's just my take on things. I know a lot about U2, and I knew a lot about that particular time period for the band. Really interesting stuff, right? Let's move on. I'm going to read a few tweets out, and then I've got to move on. We're not going to talk about Brexit anymore today. It's over. Brexit, it's over today. I've got some interesting human interest stuff coming up now in the next 25 minutes. I better hurry up. So I'm going to say hello to a few people. Good morning to Gail, who quite rightly pointed out that my attempt at a Lancashire accent was garbage and sounded more like a mutation. She didn't say this. Maybe more of a mutation between a very bad Irish accent and a Yorkshire accent. I don't know. I've never been much for accents. I've never been one for accents. My friend and colleague Jean-Anne Crowley, of course, wonderful actress, very gifted, very accomplished, can do all sorts, all manner of accents. Great talent to have. Hi to the big JC, to Sean McDonald. Good morning to Sean, to Bass Ninja, to Neil Gardner. I lived in Italy in the late 1980s, Richie. Hardly anyone wore hard hats on building sites, let alone seatbelts or crash helmets. Health and safety is a British, Swedish, German obsession, which has been exported to southern Europe. Cheers, mate. Good morning to John Bolt-on. Good morning to Stephen Lash, my mate in Manchester. Susan, these are the damned. David as well, cartoon drunk. To Patrick Vidian as well. To Ruth in Oz. How you doing, Ruth? Nice to know you're up still. To David Kona. How you doing, David? Most EU legislation is evolved from British law and standards. Good point, mate. It's the point I was making, listening to the end of the clip from Lisa Nandy as well. Feathers are us, to Rich, to everybody else. A healthy old debate going on Twitter there. David asks a good question. How did U2 get away with the title Achtung Baby? Why were they not accused of being anti-Semitic with that album title? Didn't Achtung Baby come from the producers, didn't it? Mel Brooks, the saying, didn't it? Right, anyway, I could be talking through my backside. Wouldn't be the first time, I hear you say. Fair enough, I'll take that as well. Now, final headline, by the way. Sunday Times, little bit of sleaze. Sunday Times has ignored on the front page Brexit, ignored it. And its headline is Revealed, Sex for Sale and the Tory Tycoon. What's going on? And apparently, Theresa May has accepted large donations from a property tycoon who has an apartment block. He owns an apartment block, and in that block, or on the block, there's lots of prostitution. An investigation by the Sunday Times has established that a building owned by the multi-millionaire Christopher Moran, or Moran, as they say in this godless shithole England. It's Moran, not Moran. Did I just call half of my listeners godless shithole dwellers? I probably did. So the Sunday Times said Christopher Moran owns this building and there's prostitution going on in there. This is a sleazy story. It isn't. This doesn't deserve the term sleaze. This guy has nothing to do with any of this prostitution at all. Seriously, he doesn't. His lawyers have made this perfectly clear. He owns a building, he lets it out to people, and some escort people and girls work in the building. So it's a non-story on the front page of the Sunday Times. God be with the days when sleaze stories were sleaze stories, dear listener. Do you remember them? My old pal Edwina Curry and John Major. Do you remember multiple Tory MPs and rent boys? Those were proper sleazy stories. God be with the news of the world for a bit of sleaze on a Sunday morning. Anyway, let's move on to matters more important. There's 3 or 4 very interesting human interest cultural stories in the Mail on Sunday. Here's one. Why don't we leave children alone? Seriously, I don't want to sound like Helen Lovejoy now. You know, can't somebody please think of the children? Just leave them alone. This is a horrifying story. Mother, 45, is warned her 14-year-old daughter could be taken into care after complaining her child was encouraged to have a sex change. Is it true? Did social workers threaten to take a girl into care because the mother was asking questions about the sex change? Well, I'll read you the story. A mother was warned that her daughter could be placed under the care of social workers after she complained that the 14-year-old was being encouraged to change sex by a therapist and her teachers. The 45-year-old, whom we've called Lisa to protect her identity, raised the objections after discovering that during their first hour-long appointment, an NHS psychotherapist had told the girl she could take hormones to stop her periods and give her male characteristics. After the first session? Really? In the first hour, a psychotherapist told a young girl, vulnerable young girl, oh, by the way, here's some here's some hormones, to be fair. Here, you could take some hormones. Mother wasn't happy, right? She also found out, the teachers had given her daughter a boy's name and referred to her using male pronouns without telling the parents. The school is in the Midlands. The Mail on Sunday won't reveal the name of the school because the girl is still going there. Jesus. Wait for it. The school called social services because the mother banned her daughter from visiting the NHS clinic. Why wouldn't she? After her first visit there, they said, oh, you can take hormones to stop your periods, by the way. The mother said, no, you're not going there anymore. We're going to have a think about this. We're going to relax for a bit. Just chill, right? And the school called social services on the mother. Nice people, eh? So she went to meet the school and she was told that her attempt to find an alternative therapist was like conversion therapy. You see, what's happening here is, according to the mother, the girl is gay. The young girl is a lesbian, right? The mother has no problem with that. Why would you have any problem with that, right? She's no problem with it. And she believes, does the mother, that because the girl is being bullied, the bullying has led her to this revelation, well, I must be in the wrong body. And now she has to worry about the intervention of social services. So the Mail spoke extensively to Lisa, the mother, and the mother said that her daughter came out as transgender only after being bullied at school. Unbelievable. She said she was horrified when a counsellor brought up the possibility of taking hormones in the first session. Questioned this, and, well, social services better be brought into it. I'm furious at the way we've been treated, said Lisa. No family should be put through this hell. Imagine that. That's true, by the way. It's true. The Daily. I'm not saying it's true because it's in the Daily Mail, but the story is one that we've heard so many times from people who have contacted this show, but other national and commercial radio stations have heard similar stories from parents. We wanted to say, whoa, hang on a second, and then we were told we might be harming the child. Crazy story. Here's an even crazier story in the Mail on Sunday. Sex Guide for Care Home Residents advises nurses on how to help old age pensioners download porn and use sex toys. This is not April 1st, by the way. It's November 25th, 2018. Nurses are being advised on how to help randy care home patients watch porn to relieve their frustrations. Lovely, sensitive and delicate opening line from the Mail on Sunday there. That wasn't my line, by the way. It's the Mail on Sunday. Nurses are being advised on how to help randy care home patients watch porn to relieve their frustrations. This is a guide from the Royal College of Nursing discussing how pensioners can use prostitutes, sex toys and masturbation to satisfy their needs, and it has been handed out to care homes to break the taboo of OAP's sex lives. The guide recommends that patients should be supported in accessing porn movies in their rooms, so long as they wear headphones and the sound or visual material would not be able to be heard or viewed by residents or staff. One of the case studies included a patient who asked nurses to help with masturbation, but was refused because staff felt ill-equipped to deal skillfully with their request. This is apparently a real case study. I can't for the life of me figure out how that conversation went. So let's presume, for the sake of the conversation, that the patient who asked with help with masturbation was a man, an elderly man. How did he put it to the nurse whom he was seeking assistance from? I don't even want to think about it. The nurse refused and said that we're ill-equipped to deal skillfully with their request. The leaflet advised giving the pensioner a mechanical masturbation device and explaining how to use it. So the Royal College of Nursing is saying what we need now is we need mechanical masturbation devices and just a little explanation for the OAP, and then go away and leave them to it. It suggested the patients should be able to use the services of a sex worker to satisfy their desires. So, if OAPs are randy and they want to get an escort girl or an escort boy into the care home, they should be able to do it. This is a 44-page guide called Older People in Care Homes, Sex, Sexuality and Intimate Relationship. The guide claims to want to help patients with issues of sexual and intimate relationships in a sensitive and legal way. There's got to be a sitcom here. There's got to be a movie script in here. There's got to be. This is comedy, right? I mean, this is vaudeville, right? Anyway, the Royal College of Nurses recommends that they have a space in the home where they can be completely naked if they wish. Do you want to recap on this story so far? Randy OAPs living in care homes should be allowed to have pleasure themselves and have devices to help themselves pleasure themselves if they so wish. They should be able to access porn on their phones and on their computers so long as nobody else can see it. If they want escort girls and boys to come into the care home, they should have them. And if they want a space to walk around completely naked, they should fucking well have a space to do that in as well. Why not? You think that's the end of the story, right? No, it gets better. Because if these old people want to maintain their usual sexual practices, like cross-dressing and sadomasochism, they should. Why not? Whipping the shit out of one another, chasing one another around the care home in cod pieces. Why not? This is brilliant. This is gold. A Royal College of Nursing spokeswoman, Dawn Garrett, told the Daily Express, listen to this, just because people live in a care home doesn't mean they lose the same rights, choices and responsibilities they once enjoyed in their own homes. There you go. Lovely. Going to leave that one there. There's nothing more I can say about it. Also in the Mail on Sunday, it's a real mail fest today. Here's a headline. Why be homophobic when you could just be quiet? Devout Christian mother who complained about gay parade at her 5-year-old son's school is confronted by staff member wearing this t-shirt. And I'll tell you what's on the t-shirt in a minute. So this is a devout Christian called Izzy Montague. And she's got a 5-year-old boy going to a school. She made an appointment to see the head teacher because she was unhappy about a gay pride march taking place at the school. So she expected that her concerns would be heard with some respect. But she was wrong, because a member of staff confronted her wearing a t-shirt which said, why be racist, sexist, homophobic or transphobic when you could just be quiet? She was horrified. The meeting went ahead anyway, but Montague became so angry at her treatment, she later wrote a letter of complaint to the school and moved the 5-year-old son out. She's now threatening legal action, claiming that she was victimised. She said, given the nature of my complaints, it was obviously a deliberate act of provocation to wear the T-shirt. It was intended to belittle my views and intimidate me into silence. The school, which is Heavers Farm Primary School in South East London, denies her claims, saying the choice of T-shirt worn at the meeting by Atty Copeman Pappas, the school's deputy safeguarding manager, was entirely coincidental and no offence was intended. Bullshit. Bullshit. The safeguarding manager obviously wore that T-shirt to upset the conservative Christian mother. There's no doubt about it, right? Whether she was right or wrong is subjective, but she definitely wanted to intimidate the mother. Why did this dispute come about? Well, back in June, the school in South East London organised a Proud to Be Me parade for its 750 pupils to coincide with Gay Pride Month. Parents were invited to join their children for a celebration of the rainbow things that make them and their families special. So the school's parade was entitled The Rainbow Things That Make Them and Their Families Special. Mrs. Montague declined and asked that her son be excused as the event promoted gay lifestyles that conflicted with her Christian beliefs. She says her request was refused. She said she thought it was completely unreasonable. There are several things going on here. One is, first of all, I've made my feelings clear on same-sex relationships and the rights of people to do whatever people want to do that makes them happy. Like I said, I grew up, strangely enough, around gay men and women. My closest friends when I was in school were gay, and I worked with a lot of gay men and women in radio. It's preposterous to me, and it's untenable for me that anybody should dictate to anybody else that their lifestyle is wrong or that it is immoral or any of that old nonsense. People should live and let live, and that's a fact. I've always believed that. I also believe we have to live with, whether we like it or not, we have to live with ideas and opinions that we don't agree with. We've got to live with those. We can't eradicate those. I've said this a million times. I don't agree. Well, it's interesting, with respect to Mrs. Montague, I don't agree with her opinion or her opinions, her stance on gay lifestyle. I don't agree with that. But I do have an issue with why anybody would want to be educating children about matters that surely should be left to the children to figure out for themselves as they get older. Children shouldn't be confronted by issues of sexuality and sexual orientation until they get older. Some of these children will grow up and they will be heterosexual. Some of the children will grow up and they will be homosexual. So just let them get on with it. I've always said this. Why do that? Why is the school doing that? You know, let's have a parade in the school and talk about rainbows and stuff like that. Why do that? Is it necessary to do that? I would say it isn't necessary to do that. And in that sense, the mother has got a very good point. As for the mother's opinions on gay people and what the Christian right thinks about gay people, well, their opinions to me are laughable. I have no time for any of that. But we've got to live with people whose opinions differ from ours. We can't. I've said it too many times. I'm boring myself. 8 minutes to the top of the hour. Also in the Mail on Sunday, I'm running out of time now. How fake medical news is seriously damaging our health. From vaccines and heart pills to cancer drugs and diets, as experts report a rise in misinformation online, a special investigation tackles the dangerous myths threatening our health. Myth. So they are saying, the Mail on Sunday, fake medical news is damaging our health. It's got to be dealt with. And they've got a special investigation in the paper today. We're living in an era of fake news, says the Mail on Sunday. False, often sensational information spread under the guise of legitimate reporting. In almost every medical sphere, from vaccines and heart health to cancer drugs and diet, experts have reported a huge increase in misinformation online, which at best obfuscates the truth and at worst contradicts it entirely. So they quote a woman called Professor Heidi Larson. She's a public health expert at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She says that fake health news is bad science, and it is often spread by those who capitalise on doubts over standard therapies to make a profit from books, supplements and alternative services. Now, this is not a black and white issue, so don't lose your shit, dear listener, when you hear me say she has a point. And the Mail on Sunday has a point. On the one hand, there are snake oil salesmen. Mike Adams being one of them. I not talked about him for a long time, but I did a piece on him 2 years ago. This guy with the massive website in America selling supplements and all sorts of crap. The guy's worth hundreds of millions. Mike Adams. Natural News, I think it's called. Absolute snake oil salesman. Profiting on the genuine belief amongst people that the answers to their health problems don't exclusively lie with GPs and conventional medicine, which is true. I would agree with that. I've always believed that the cure, not the treatment, but the cure for everything is in the natural earth. We are surrounded probably by the cure for everything, and very powerful organizations like the World Health Organization, like the big pharmaceutical companies, they will do anything to prevent us from understanding that the cures for everything can be found in the natural earth, in plants, right? And I believe that wholeheartedly. But I think there are snake oil salesmen as well. And I think they are very prominent right now. And I think people are lazy on social media. They see articles with headlines and they just share them on as if they are true. And often they are not true. Or they are being promoted by the likes of Mike Adams and others, and they are making staggering amounts of money out of what I would call clickbait practices. It's what they do. Now, don't lose your shit. I, more than any other presenter, have spent a lot of the last 10 years on my programs talking about how the European Union is being used to make illegal, to ban effectively, natural treatments, natural herbal remedies, which have great benefit for people. I've talked all about that. What I'm trying to say here is this is not a black and white issue. Okay? Yes, this is a clampdown on free speech, and I don't agree with it. Much as I think Mike Adams is a shyster, I would not ban him. I would not seek to marginalise him at all. I trust people to be clever enough to realise, after they've been duped once, that they have been duped and that it is snake oil. I wouldn't ban any of these people. And what I feel is going on here is that the masters of clickbait, like Mike Adams, the establishment is going to use them as the example when it's not really Mike Adams they want to go after. It's the thousands and thousands of other people who are not multimillionaires, genuine people who are sharing information that is beneficial to people, information about natural remedies. That's who they want to get rid of. And this story in the Mail on Sunday today about health and fake news and clickbait is going to use the giants of the alternative health internet domain as the example when it's not them they're really after. I think you understand where I'm going with that. And if you don't, well, what can I do? I've not made my case very well. First time I've mentioned this particular guy in 2 years. I think he is dreadful. I think I couldn't sleep if I was somebody like Mike Adams. And he's not alone. There are dozens of them peddling crap online and selling easy answers to people while they become very, 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 very wealthy. I don't think the system wants to go after him or them. They will tell you that they do, because it's always about them, me, they're coming after me. They want to go after genuine practitioners of alternative health and people who dispense remedies, people who don't become ridiculously wealthy from it, people who do have alternative answers to big pharma and to big medicine. That's what I believe. It's a big story, that. And I think we'll take it up on the Richie Allen Show in the coming weeks as well. That's pretty much it, I think, for the programme today. I'm going to leave you with some music from an Irish band that I loved when I was much younger. Thanks for listening today, by the way. It was a bit of a hodgepodge today, a lot of Brexit in there as well. And I know a lot of tweets came in. In the last 5-10 minutes, by the way, that I won't be able to get to. But if it's about this medicine stuff, we will talk about it we might even do a phone in on it in the coming week, or in the coming couple of weeks. We'll do a phone in on this, because I know that will have triggered some people. But listen back to what I said and what I said exactly, and then you'll understand where I'm coming from. All right? Going to leave you and love you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. You and I will talk again tomorrow, Monday, at 5 p.m. UK time on the Richie Allen Show. Monday, tomorrow at 5 UK time on the usual channels. Until then, look after yourselves and one another. Going to leave you with The Pale. This is a wonderful tune called Mother Nature is a Man. Bye now. See you soon.